the hell am I?
The good
Shut
news,
up.
we might be living through an equally epochal age. One that will shrink not just the borders of the world.
Man, that would be so cool. I have some questions and some concerns about the 45 days part, but yeah, that would be cool.
But of the entire solar
That's what-
system. As you watch this, engineers connected to NASA are working on a new generation of rockets. Rockets that will combine nuclear thermal and nuclear electric propulsion to slash travel times. Getting to Mars, for example.
Combining the two. So I'm sure he'll get to more details in a bit, but nuclear electric basically involves a nuclear reactor generating electricity to power electric thrusters such as ion drives to accelerate propellant ions such as
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you right there. Nuclear for ion thrusters is a budding, not even tested for a regular spaceship technology. We have never made an ion thruster shuttle. Okay? We haven't even tried because all we have is ion satellites. That's different. If you want to make an ion shuttle, you need to have the entire hull covered in ion thrusters, and then you still might not be able to go fast at all. Also, hopefully the emissions from the ion thruster won't hit the sides of the ship, so we need to have them on like poles leading away from the thing. It's a mess. That's never been done. So, don't talk to me about ion thrusters. They're not a thing yet. I don't care if they are a thing. They're not in use for the person moving a ship thing. That's not happened. It won't happen yet.
xenon at very high velocities, producing high specific impulse, meaning it's quite
You know, I could accelerate literally anything I want out the back of my shithole. I don't care. But, in order to get accelerant, you have to have something. Let's say you have something that is growing in your ship, and that makes material, and that material gets sent out. Guess what happens to every single ion thruster? They shit that stuff out, and it's just gone. The morons making the ships are making limited material thrusters. You know you can make a thruster that has the ability to then send it out, and for that amount of space and time, you're able to have that propulsion, and then you can suck it back in and reuse it consistently forever. Until you get a certain speed, you're going to have some drop-off that's going to fling out, unless the entire system is in a tube. Then you have no negation of all the stuff. You have constant velocity of you shot something forward. Equal opposite reactions, who cares? You did that, but what you could do...
fuel.
Sorry, I like having people pause on a respectable face. What you could do, right, you shoot it, and then you suck it back in, and using a method of motion that is not as much force as what it took to shoot it backwards, you pull it forward again, you shoot it again. Right? It's like saying, if I were to, let's say that I use real big, giant balls, and I shoot them to the back of my ship, right? The effort it took to push that is what it will experience as a jolt forward. And then, on the back end of it, first of all, you dampen all of the stuff with inertial dampening, something like, ballistics gel or something. or an electromagnetic field, for example, that can absorb the thing you shot back so that its kinetic energy is dissipated and the net is positive. Then you pull it along and you shoot it again. You pull it along slowly so that its momentum of moving forward again to the front of the ship doesn't change your velocity. Right? And then you shoot it again, and you get another big jolt. This is how you can work with a spaceship and kinetic energy and stuff. Instead of using goddamn tiny little particles, you can use a massive punch like this. And you can make a piston-based type system that does a pump, and a pump, and a pump, and a pump, and the total net motion is always positive. But you have to absorb all that kinetic energy, and you could do that with electromagnetism. Like, it'll just slow it down, right? You want to slow it down because you don't want to be taking out all that kinetic energy back into the system, and the slowing down mechanism can be buffered so that its own, like its catcher's mitt, if you will, takes and goes back a bit, and then as it moves forward, it can also, like, you can make a system of catching and throwing such that the mass of all these can be chained together so that they are providing more push and more reset, and then slowly, and then push, and then reset, and then push, and then reset, and the big push you get is the total momentum that you'll receive. As long as all the pistons are working correctly, you will just make a ship that is able to go as fast as you like, technically, but then once you get up to certain high speeds, obviously the amount of push that you're able to give and then receive is minimal. That's why we use particles, because with the particles, the amount of impact, even at high speeds, is able to be negated by very small amounts of effort, so that you don't end up. And what we always end up wanting to just have the accelerant just go out the back, and we don't think about it again. I'm thinking about recycling and consistency and the ability to reuse this fuel and then consider going even faster. Energy jolts leading to extreme accelerations with capacitors and whatever else, and more thrust than an ion drive ever could give you. But we're not there yet.
Efficient. And then you have nuclear thermal, which works more like
This is untested technology.
a rocket. There, your fission reactor heats liquid hydrogen to extreme temperatures, which expands and exits through a nozzle, creating thrust. So, more direct, but there you have the challenges of higher neutron flux and just hydrogen gas in space.
No longer takes 7 months. Rather, it'll take a mere 45 days. And that raises...
I don't see that possible, even in the optimal Earth-Mars distance of 55 million kilometers. Because 45 days, your average relative velocity to Earth figures out to about 14 kilometers per second, but that's the average, so acceleration in DC.
I don't like kilometers per second. However, if you just multiply that by 60, you end up with kilometers per hour. What is that? Let's find out. Okay, so if you can get your ship to go approximately 900 kilometers per hour, or per minute, oops, sorry, I have to multiply it again by 60, you need to go 50,000 kilometers an hour to go to Mars in 45 days. That's a relativistic... Just kidding. But that's fast. Could be considered the space of the ISS is going 10,000 or 20. So you have to go 3 times the space station speed. So, I mean, come on! Don't tell me you can't do that! Don't tell me you can't! You totally can! The average speed is consistent 50,000, maybe 52,000 to get to the 45 days? What if you could go 100,000 kilometers an hour?
Acceleration, you're going to need something like 30 to 40 kilometers per second for your relative velocity compared to the traditional chemical rockets.
Yeah, 100,000 or 140,000 kilometers per hour. Okay. Now we're getting into the... Well, okay, that's a lot of speed. And do you really want to be going that fast? Because we're only going like 20 right now. That's more like 7 times as fast as we've ever gone in a spaceship? Can we go that fast as a person?
It's getting you there at around 8 to 9 kilometers per second. That's
I don't care if we can go that fast as a person. Can we get the ship to go that fast? Yes, we can. But so the cargo can get there in less time. For us, let's say we half the speed, double the time, and we end up with something that's, again, 70,000 kilometers an hour.
That's quite a bit.
Possibilities of soon witnessing a crude Mars landing, of colonization, possibilities that may finally turn humans into an interplanetary species.
Man, that would be so cool. I'd like...
Here's the thing, the conditions on Mars are dubious at best. The top surface layer has radiation that it never gets rid of because there's no atmosphere, no cycling, and nothing. So it's constantly just bombarded with radiation. So what we need to do is make an underground system, obviously, and then turn up the soil, which, let's face it, we said that we couldn't do it. You didn't use big machinery, okay? You used a drone drill. It wasn't easy to do that. But what you can do is you can just shove a big ass shovel down there from a giant machine, and you have a little bit more ability to do that. Also, you could use like industrial strength materials and stuff that you can use to make pressure and whatever else, so you can get through that topsoil, and then you have the rest of Mars underneath to work with. That's not that hard.
See that?
If
Please don't tell me this is Elon Musk.
For fans of extremely dorky news, 2023 started with a delightful present. The announcement of the latest Phase 1 funding for NASA's Innovative Advanced Concepts Program, known as NIAC. The program is where science dreams are born. It's the space equivalent of Walt Disney's Imagineering department, a place where fascinating concepts are explored and fleshed out in the hopes of one day becoming real. This year's selection did not disappoint. Among our favourites are Titan Air, a flying boat that would explore the
Look at that retro-futuristic concept.
in seas of Saturn's largest moon, and a plan to use lasers to accelerate a 1-ton payload to so fast that it would cross 500 astronomical units of space in a mere 15 years. But even these gems, there was one proposal that really stood out. A proposal that could conceivably alter our conception of solar system distances. A proposal to design nuclear rockets that could fly humans to Mars in just 45 days. The brainchild of Ryan Goss and the University of Florida, the project is officially known by the deeply unsexy name of New Class of Bimodal NTP/NEP with a wave cycle, rotor, topping cycle enabling fast transit to Mars.
I'm actually kind of surprised a technical title like that even included the fast transit to Mars part.
Yeah, they could have come up with a better name, couldn't they? But what this
Clearly made by technical people. I've read my share of those.
word
That's the file
salad
name,
lacks
that's
in
not
credibility, it more than makes up for with its revolutionary content. The NTP
What's
part
the
of that
acronym?
title stands for Nuclear Thermal Propulsion, a system that powers rockets by using an onboard reactor
It's not a
to heat
fun
liquid
acronym.
propellant, turning it into gas and expelling it out of a nozzle
Basically
to
a
create
nuclear
thrust.
rocket.
It's twice as efficient as the chemical rockets.
It sucks ass. You're wasting material every second. You're not returning that material to you.
Systems that we use today and can quickly speed up a craft to an ungodly velocity. NEP, on the other hand, stands
Yeah, I mean, after all, it uses nuclear power.
How
It's going to
ungodly.
be more efficient. The reactor's the heater, the hydrogen's the working fluid, and the exhaust is high-speed hydrogen gas. And it does, so 45 days aside, it could really cut the travel time quite significantly by 20 to 30%, realistically. Challenges, though, is it requires cryogenic hydrogen, which is hard to store. It's hard to store anything in space. The reactor's design's got to be pretty rugged to operate in space. And it's not by itself. It would be staged in space. Like, you're not going to leave Earth's atmosphere with this nuclear rocket. It would already be set up in space.
nuclear electric propulsion. Unlike NTP,
I mean, obviously, you never have to go from Earth's surface to anywhere. You could always just, hey, let's take a bus to the shuttle. The shuttle's going to take us to the moon, to the next place, whatever else. Or the cruiser is going to take us to the next place. And the bullet train of fuck all is going to take us to the next star.
NEP uses a reactor to create electricity. This current is then used to positively charge an
At that point, this one is similar to a nuclear power plant on Earth in that you're making electricity, though you use the electricity for propulsion.
inert gas like xenon and fire the arms out of a thruster, pushing the craft forward. Unlike NTP, nuclear electric propulsion creates a relatively gentle thrust. The ply for a long
Sorry.
time, though, and the craft can build up to incredible speeds, all while using remarkably little propellant.
Can I hear one of those speeds, please? I would love that.
That's its advantage, though it's going to be low thrust relative to NTP. I mean, you're blowing air through a straw to move a truck, basically, but if you do it for long enough, then you have strong enough lungs, and you...
Okay, I love that analogy. However, we tried blowing an entire, dam worth of water out of a straw, and we ended up with nuclear fusion. So don't tell me straws are not powerful.
You're in space, eventually.
Check out my other video.
You'll
I
get moving.
responded
But
to
yeah,
that
I've
already,
heard
I think.
these ion thrusters, one of the units they use is millimeters per second squared as opposed to meters per second squared. And here you'll have the added mass in the form of radiators to dump its waste heat. Less so than cryogenic hydrogen.
No! I am gonna vomit on your face, and you will apologize for me needing to be so disgusted that I did that. Because holy shit, no! You are not wasting that heat. Stop it. Tyler, not all due respect, more respect, a lot of respect for you. You're doing great, but you're not going to dissipate that heat. You're going to utilize it to do stuff. Like, you can make power with it. You could use it to make more materials, start doing things. You could shunt it towards your reactor to heat it up so that it can get to the point where it has the ability to make sustained fusion. I don't know. But you could do something with the heat instead of just dissipate it. Holy crap, no.
less space.
These two systems, NTP and NEP, are the major forms of nuclear propulsion that
Please
space
do not
agencies are
support
considering the development. But the
waste of
University of
heat.
Florida plan goes further. Rather than just working on NTP or NEP, it envisages sticking both systems onto a single rocket, and that's the bimodal part of that
Yeah, they could conceivably work together.
title. As their proposal puts it, to quote, this bimodal design enables the fast transit for manned missions, 45 days to Mars, and revolutionizes the deep space.
And again, even the whole 45 days, because of Mars and Earth's relative position, at best seasonal. Even if you could somehow do it, which I'm not.
Okay, let me get it to you straight again, because that's the closest Earth to Mars orbit relation. If you want to do, for example, any other time, it's like the Mars will end up like on the other side of the sun compared to the Earth, so it's a very good distance away. We don't want to have to pass by the freaking sun or Mercury in order to get further out to Mars. That would be kind of silly. So we obviously go when it's lined up nicely.
That you're going to get there that fast.
Exploration of our solar system, which is great news for NASA, as getting to Mars is something the agency is desperate to do. In 2020, NASA has been under a 10-year deadline imposed by the White House to show off its nuclear prowess by safely depositing a 10-kilowatt power system on the surface of the moon. A year later, Congress handed the agency an extra $110 million to nuclear rockets that could be used for interplanetary voyages. This dovetailed nicely with NASA's own plans to investigate bimodal NTP/NEP systems, which has been a priority since 2017. The results? A whole new set of deadlines. One, to use a nuclear robot to
Let's
place
hear it.
cargo on Mars by 2033. Another to place humans on the Red Planet by 2039.
Yeah, those are going to be goalposts, not firm timelines or deadlines. If stable.
Well, obviously the reason why we have these big jumps is again because of that Mars orbit stuff.
Funding is secured and breakthroughs happen, such as in reactor miniaturization and shielding technology, that's still ambitious.
The University of Florida proposal is an integral part of making this happen. Now, before you rush off to pack your spacesuit, we should be clear that this is still early days of development.
And when you're this early, man, I mean, I know you gotta say something to NASA to obtain funding, but man, I wouldn't feel comfortable throwing any data out there at this point because we haven't even really proven the technology yet. I mean, we've proven the concept maybe. As far as will it get you to Mars, I still don't think you're getting there.
We have moved satellites, tiny payloads, using a tiny thruster, which is great because they don't need a lot in order to move that, which is great. However, you also need to, like, if you're not using a recycling rocket, a vortex engine for another thing, I get into that in other videos. Vortex engine is the best. Well, the main idea is to have some amount, like I already said, you propel the stuff out the back, but then you cycle it back by rotating it around slowly. The vortex is the part that does the rotating it so that you can reset and have a constant flow without, and if you, obviously that'll have some torque to it, so you have to have multiple of them so they cancel out their torque momentum. And if you do that and everything's good, then you have a nice little swirl one way, swirl the other way jetpack thing that you go on, you go poo! And none of your crap is flying out the back of you, becoming less and less of your weight. Constant weight, constant velocity, closed system rockets, way better.
5 days.
UC's Phase 1 grants is just $12,500 per project. Even if it succeeds beyond everybody's wildest dreams, it's a few years out from becoming reality. Still, it's a good opportunity.
I've heard it's higher than that, on the order of 100,000 or 200,000, but granted, that's drop in the bucket compared to what you'd actually need.
Take a closer look at NASA's nuclear rocket and Mars landing plans in general. But trust me, if you're anything like us, what you're about to hear will make you extremely excited for the future.
Okay.
At this stage, you might be wondering why NASA are so invested in nuclear propulsion. I mean, sure, it's quicker, but it's not like regular old chemical rockets are incapable of reaching the red planet. After all, we've already deposited multiple rovers on our cosmic sibling. But the point is that rovers are not humans. They're machines, robots that we can deposit on the Martian surface and then leave there once the mission is over.
One of the things about getting you there faster is less exposure to radiation from space, because astronauts can get considerably more dose than any job in a nuclear plant.
Astronauts, by contrast, well, they're living people. NASA has a major need, not
to mention food supply, logistics, that sort of thing.
I mean, if you have the right kind of shielding, again, that's going to be massive machine of, like, concrete, water, something to buffer all the stuff that you would be that would smash in on your front of your ship, to hope that that doesn't come in towards the rest of your life forms that you're moving. Yeah, it's going to be a pain, but it's like, there are technological things that we can do to make it easier. The radiation is not as much a problem as we want to be able to do it faster.
Yeah, I get it.
To Mars, but to keep alive and then get them back. Surprise. And it turns out that the goal of not letting everyone die, like in some sci-fi horror movie, is made easier by using nuclear propulsion. To understand why, let's have a quick look at travel times. We mentioned in the opening how a normal trip to Mars takes around 7 months on chemical rockets, compared to just 45 days with nuclear propulsion. But this doesn't come close.
The thing is, when they're using chemical rockets, how long is that burn, and are they not just drifting on their way there? Or do they have to, like, reaccelerate to keep themselves at a good speed? Like, huh? You're not jetting yourself that whole time. Like, you have to jet yourself to the moon, and then use a gravity assist, and then you're flung there, right? To get yourself at higher speeds, you'd have to do another gravity assist, and there's nothing else to gravity assist with, except for the Earth. But we don't do that.
To explaining just how long a mission would really be. Mars, like the other planets, is not a fixed distance from Earth. Because we all go whizzing around the sun at different speeds, our sibling is sometimes relatively nearby and sometimes right on the other side of our parent star. That means that Mars missions can only be
certain windows, yep.
Every 26 months, when Planet 4 is at its closest, what's known as Mars opposition. And this isn't just something that needs to be considered on the outward journey. Waiting for the right planetary alignment for a return trip will require astronauts to spend at least a year on Mars. Add in the outward and return journey times, each lasting between 6 and 9 months, and you could potentially wind up having each Mars mission last nearly 3 years. That's 3 years in which your crew will need to be kept alive.
And it doesn't matter how fast you get there, you're going to have to wait that long anyway. So it'd be nicer if you could have provisions be able to send, but that just means more rockets. It still doesn't matter how fast you get there. Like, you're trying to shorten the time so you can be more, but you just need to send, what?
3 years in which they'll spend a dangerously long amount of time in space, where they'll likely be exposed to radiation and deal with microgravity and other stuff that does things to your body that...
That's a bit silly, but yeah, long-term radiation exposure is a thing, and not to mention the effects of the degenerate effects of microgravity.
Watching MSNBC does to your brain, ruin it. rockets. For these reasons, NASA is trying to cut mission times down to a maximum of 2 years. Shaving 5 months or more off both outward and return journeys will be a massive help with that. But it's not just astronaut health that NASA is having to worry about. The second major improvement nuclear propulsion brings is far more prosaic. It's much, much cheaper. Chemical rockets require lots of propellant.
Once economies of scale are realized and there's various operational efficiencies are achieved after doing this for a while, then yeah, just like with nuclear power plants on Earth.
So much that just getting enough propellant off Earth for a single Mars mission could set NASA back $80 billion. Last year, Scientific American crunched the numbers. The International Space Station weighs 420 metric tons and took a decade of launches to assemble.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's going to be decommissioned in 2030, which is cool.
the propellant alone for a Mars mission could weigh between twice and 10 times that. This means between 800 and
We really should get a space elevator to get that stuff up there without using propellant to get it up there in the first place.
40 and 4,200 tons of material that NASA would need to get into space just to act as fuel.
Though I will say, building, launching, and testing nuclear propulsion in space will have stringent safety requirements. Heavy shielding, reactor startup logistics, not to mention there's going to be political and regulatory concerns associated with launching anything that's nuclear-based. And there'd be training. I mean, you'd have to train the astronauts essentially how to be reactor operators, but that...
Why would you... Wait. Again, I return back to... Don't you just use that fuel to do a moon gravity assist? And that can only get you so fast, because clearly, obviously, if you go faster, you would already be shot off of the moon. So the moon can only help you so much. Earth can only help you so much. Ironically, you'd use the sun for a gravity assist if you really want to go faster. But that's extra length on your trip. And that also, the thing is, once you go at certain speeds, the sun being a gravity assist is only going to help so much. You're not going to get a... It's complicated, dangerous, and whatever else, but forgetting about all the danger parts, let's compensate for all that. Because we can. I'm not saying we can't, we can. Using the sun as a gravity assist, you'll be able to get there faster, sooner, and stuff. Who's calling me?
worlds.
That's probably the easiest part of all this.
Current systems,
Where
that
was
could cost
it?
nearly $80 billion in launches. Even when SpaceX's Starship, which can haul up to 100 tons, starts making routine flights, it'll still be a time-consuming and expensive endeavor. By contrast, nuclear propulsion offers virtually unlimited energy density. The total mass for a
I have a problem with saying unlimited, but
Listen, my rocket is unlimited because it reuses the material to then use it again. The only thing is the amount of power that you need to generate, which we could just... We solve that problem, and then boom, you just can go as fast as you like, as far as you like, with a system sophisticated enough and, like, with all the parts. Hello, the stream is happening more again. Yay, this is a great way of doing live streams. Pausing.
much, much higher than the chemical rockets by a factor of 1,000 or more once it gets going.
rocket and its fuel source together would be somewhere in the region of 500 to 1,000 tons. Sure, it's still heavy, but it's no longer prohibitively heavy. With
And it's really the support systems that are going to make it heavy, not so much the fuel itself.
launches, the cost of emission would plummet. This in turn makes flying to Mars less off-putting to the people funding NASA, so everybody wins. So that's the why of nuclear propulsion, as in, why is this a good idea? Let's now turn to the what, or more accurately, the question of, what the heck is all this tech anyway? Making a video like this about cutting-edge tech, it's often easier to focus on all of the benefits that it can bring. It makes the story more exciting. It makes it a lot more fun
Why didn't
to
I take
research.
off my
And I'm sure
shorts?
talking about the benefits is good, but there's always going to be
Oh, yeah.
people
I'm
that are going
going
to say,
out to
all right,
get
what's
my
the catch?
paycheck.
Why
Yeah.
hasn't it been done already?
Of course, though,
I need a
real
drink.
life rarely presents us with technology free of downsides. If it did, we'd all be living in the culture and enjoying unlimited pleasure instead of existing in a world of Twitter algorithms and
Culture as in from Ian Banks? Man, that's been a while.
Microsoft
Oi, 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 oi.
chatbots. And that goes for NTP and NEP. While both have massive advantages to recommend them, they both also
Ooh.
come with their own set of headaches and challenges.
Sure.
Let's look at nuclear thermal propulsion first. As we mentioned
Ew.
earlier, NTP runs by using a nuclear reactor to heat a propellant,
Water
liquid
is
hydrogen,
boring.
until it becomes an ionized gas and is expelled out of the rocket's backside like some gigantic space farce, and that generates thrust.
Really?
The issue here is
mean,
that to
yeah.
heat the propellant, the reactor has to be operating at some pretty high temperatures. Temperatures around the 2,500 Celsius, that's 4,500 Fahrenheit mark.
That's very hot considered for essentially the reactor coolant system. And there's your bottleneck. Material fatigue, neutron embrittlement from not just high temperature, but high
Use
radiation
sound
levels,
to
as
control
well as
the
thermal
neutrons.
expansion has to be meticulously managed. This is compared to a reactor coolant system at a nuclear power plant on Earth being on the order of 300, 350 degrees Celsius. The advantage to using something cooled by water and also not having it be in space.
Why do I have to use a rag to open a stupid bottle like this? Just make your lids easier to twist open. Please, thank you. There's a gripping surface? That hurts my hand. I'd rather have a smooth surface. Something. Like, you don't have that on a pop bottle. No, you don't. It's not this bumpy, dude. This is really bumpy. You see how bumpy that is? It's bumpy. I am retracting my statement.
Sure, it maintains those temperatures and works well in deep space without endangering the craft is a pretty tricky challenge, one that gives material engineers cluster headaches. On top of that, NTP still needs vast amounts of propellant, a mere fraction of what chemical rocket requires, sure, but still enough that engineers will need to figure out how to incorporate serious-sized storage tanks. The flip side is that once it's all in place, an NTP rocket is pretty straightforward. You use the system to build up tremendous speed in mere hours, hurling yourself towards Mars. And then
Provided you're actually in space, this picture of him In the atmosphere, no. You're still going to use chemical rockets to get you there, or a heavy lift transport. I know the space shuttle's retired, but he mentioned Starship. Okay, sure. Assuming that gets pulled off, something to at least get you in orbit first.
The system, by contrast, requires weeks or even months to gradually build up the velocity it's capable of. It's only by running for very long times that ion engines in general can generate significant levels of thrust. And this is a problem, because nuclear electric propulsion also generates...
This isn't your ion drive that you see on Imperial Star Destroyers. This one takes a while.
Massive amounts of unwanted thermal energy. So, NASA needs to come up with a way to dissipate it all safely, a process that could involve equipping the craft with giant radiators on the outside. The word could in that last sentence is a clue to another issue with NEP. It's
put Stirling engines and use that heat to make power.
And that's going to be the majority of the weight associated with that, just like the cryogenic freezing for NT.
All you need is the outside you could not just have heat dissipating. I mean, if you put a bunch of Stirling engines, all that heat can be translated into cool, but as it does that, it's making a transmission and heat transfer. A Stirling engine will take the hot air, right, and it will pump it into a tank, and then as you cool it, it compresses, right? You could do that, or you could do the other way. It's like you could have the cooled air, which is cooled from the outside, and then this superheating thing heats up that air and makes it go pump. And every time you do that, you could also use that as added propulsion. It's not a lot, but it's something. And you can do that. The amount of all the stuff that would work towards that is like negligible. But you could do something with it.
PP of your hydrogen here, radiators that take up a lot of space.
Relatively new technology that requires a lot more development compared to NTP. But while an NTP rocket alone would shave months off a trip to Mars, it's not the fastest method out there. No, that would be a rocket that combines both NTP and NEP systems. And this is where the University of Florida proposal that we opened with comes back in. While not the only team looking at bimodal nuclear propulsion, the Florida guys have some extra bells and whistles on their design that make it even more attractive. Specifically, they've included a pressure wave supercharger. Now look.
So basically a space-compatible turbocharger to increase the energy transfer efficiency from reactor to propellant. It hasn't even been implemented on Earth. So, space environment, high radiation environment, that's going to add some complexity.
We're not rocket scientists, we can't pretend to fully understand these things any more than rocket scientists fully understand how to present popular YouTube channels while rocking a spectacular blazer. These things are really definitely equal in their complexity. So instead of trying to explain it ourselves, we're just going to use this quote from the wonderful Universe Today. The proposal also includes a pressure wave supercharger, or wave rotor, WR, a technology used in internal combustion engines that harnesses the pressure waves produced by reactions to compress intake air. When paired with an NTP engine, the WR would use the pressure
Stirling engine
created by the reactor's heating of the LH2 fuel to compress the reaction mass further.
I mean, sure, as a concept, they exist on cars, but we're not using a car with nuclear propulsion here. That's your key difference when combining this thing.
In other words, it will generate a whole extra level of thrust, one that only increases when you include an NEP. Right now, NTP engines create what's called a specific impulse of 900 seconds. Sticking the wave rotor onto it will increase that to 1400 to 2000 seconds. Add in the wave rotor and the NEP cycle, and you get a specific impulse of 1800 to 4000 seconds. Even non-rocket scientists like us can see that that's a fairly massive improvement.
So all that's speculative. I mean, NERVA reached, as far as the 900, all right, NERVA reached 850 in ground tests. Sure, I can buy the 900. The 1400 to 2000 is optimistic and purely theoretical. And the NEP number of 4000, sure, NEP can might be able to theoretically do 3,000 to 6,000 even.
I
But
can't
we're talking
put a lot into
millinewton
this.
levels of thrust. Not to mention you're going to merge these two modes. So all of that is just speculation.
It's how we could see a ship get to Mars in 45 days. All that ideas like
All right, even still, that's
It's not like using a propeller and then switching the propeller mode into a jet engine. It's like two different types of electrical engineering. And you can do that.
not getting you there in 45 minutes. So even with perfect staging, might be able to get you some delta V's that can shave down time to 90 to 120 days. And here we're talking the Earth to Mars at about 55 million kilometers. And if you just say build a bigger one, okay, sure, but reactors have thermal limits. Do not exceed thermal limits. That's one of the first things you're taught as a reactor operator. Because there's limits on materials. Even though you're in space, there's still melting points, there's still neutron and brittle, and there's still a waste heat removal capacity. In order to get you there that fast, it would be so impractical. You'd need hundreds.
Okay, neutron embrittlement you can compensate for. You can also make materials that can recover themselves, which is like nanotech, or that weird kind of concrete that's able to regenerate after you have water interact with it. That was a joke, by the way. Although that ancient concrete method is like, oh wow, it grows back. That is cool. You won't be using that in space, but you could do. There's just stuff you could do about embrittlement. For example, stopping it entirely using sound. Get it by level.
megawatts, which would need ultra mega scale radiators, which is just impractical with current technology. Also, to sustain acceleration for 45 days, you would need a ridiculous mass ratio because of all the fuel you would use. And at that point, hydrogen boil-off, structural mass, and shielding constraints start to become a problem. We are ultimately still in the technology demonstration phase.
just appear out of the ether, though. Impressive as it is, the
They don't even know how to use sound yet.
regime's concept is only possible thanks to decades of groundwork. Taste, zero sugar. That's it. Considering it's currently 2023 and flying a crude nuclear rocket to Mars remains sadly hypothetical, it'll either blow
It
your
still is in 2025.
it'll really burn you out to hear that NASA first considered doing this in, wait for it, 1958. That means that Eisenhower...
Oh yeah, nuclear power, anything nuclear was the cool hyper-advanced tech.
Nuclear. 70 years later, we haven't done it yet. Wow. Because you're not working with sound.
Technology back then. So there were thoughts to put it on cars, on trains, on planes, pretty much everything.
was still in the White House when the agency commissioned a formal study for a nuclear-powered 420-day mission to Mars. In fact, it was so far back that NASA didn't even exist yet at this stage. It was just the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. Regardless, the vision of American astronauts planting these stars and stripes on the red planet was still enticing enough that serious work went into the program. Work that took it farther than anyone could have predicted. In tandem with the Space Nuclear Propulsion Office, NASA spent a whole chunk of the 1960s working on something called NERVA, an acronym for
This is what I was talking about earlier.
Vehicle Applications. Opened in 1963, the program would lead to 23 nuclear reactor tests at a government site in Nevada's wonderfully named Jackass Flats. By the end of the decade, the SNPO would have certified an NTP solid-core nuclear thermal engine as suitable for crewed missions. Prototype rockets were tested here on Earth, but NASA, riding nuclear rockets to Mars, became central to the agency's vision for following up on the Apollo program. And all of which raises a rather obvious question. What happened? How come we're not now living in a world where the US put a man on Mars several decades ago? Well, for that, you can thank the man responsible for so many of his era's disappointments.
I mean, it's easy to blame Nixon for a lot of things, but there were other shifting priorities towards the space shuttle program, over deep space exploration, as well as budget pressures. But yeah, it would be interesting to see the alternate timeline, possibly in the For All Mankind universe, and when this stuff started to take off.
Richard Nixon. In 1973, the Nixon White House axed the nuclear propulsion project and ruthlessly slashed
This is a fluff piece.
NASA's budget. What was left was directed not towards exploring Mars, but towards the Space Shuttle program. Interestingly, this wasn't the end of the NTP dream. The USSR was working on its own nuclear propulsion concept, which continued to be funded even as the American one shut down. But the Soviet program was beset by its own problems, and work folded in 1980 without a single test. And so, the NTP dream died, not to be revived until much closer to our own era, by which time there'd be a whole other form of nuclear propulsion in the mix. NEP had been around as a theory for a little while, but it was only in 2003 that NASA went ahead and teamed up with the US Navy and the Department of Energy to flesh out the concept.
This was for deeper space, yeah, Jupiter.
Unlike the 1958 project, no one in 2003 was imagining astronauts walking on Mars. They were more interested in making probes that could go really far, really fast, and pull off some incredible science. Unfortunately, Prometheus was canned by NASA in 2005 due to issues with NASA's budget. It's only been
recurring theme here. Priorities just always tend to shift over these pie-in-the-sky type applications.
Gotten interested in boosting solar electric propulsion tech for its upcoming Artemis moon missions, that NEP has rebounded as a concept. Now that it has, though, it looks a whole lot like it might be here to stay. Unlike in 1973 or 2005, there are currently no signs that NASA or Congress are in budget-cutting mode. Instead, we're at a point where NASA,
until they are,
mandated to work on nuclear tech to put a reactor on the moon, where Congress is side-eyeing China's burgeoning space program and appropriating extra money to make sure that the US stays ahead of the game. As a result, dollars are starting to flow into projects like the University of Florida one, projects that could transform our current methods of interplanetary travel as profoundly as the railroad transformed journeys across America. And that could...
Man, as much as I would love to see this, so even if this worked perfectly and everything, say it budget didn't get axed or anything like that, because all those challenges that I mentioned, I didn't want to poo-poo on it too much because they're all problems that are by no means insolvable. However, that's still not going to put you there in 45 days. It's still going to be more in the 3 to 4 month timeline, which is way faster and would be a momentous achievement. I don't want to downplay, just kick it to 3 to 4 months. But in order to get you there in 45 days, you're going to need bigger reactors, well in the 100, 200 megawatt range. You're still going to need radiator systems, lots of propellant, some shock absorber systems. I mean, after all, you're going to be going pretty...
The moment that you start using a reuse the propellant function, the propellant amount simply has to be... Let's say you only need 2 pounds of propellant more than you would use for... Okay, let's say that you need... Okay, it stops being about how much propellant is going to be used in the rocket, and it has to do with how much of the propellant is going to degrade. Okay? Because we're reusing our own piss out there. Why would we not reuse our propellant? Why? So my question is, why not have a closed loop system? Have the thrust be constant, suck it back in, and then use it again. Right? Nothing wasted. And then at that point, you have to think about, well, how is everything going to stay together and everything. You need literally not just a fraction of the fuel to get you anywhere. You can go everywhere with this rocket and not give a shit. Right? It's not about, at that point, again, it's not about how much fuel you have will lead to anywhere. With the reused fuel system, reused propulsion system, which is why the microwave engine that they made, yeah, that was underdeveloped. It's still a technology that can work and is okay. I'm fine with this video. I'm even fine with the other video. I'm not gonna be bothered by either one of them, but I'm just saying the problem with their estimates is based off of technology as it is, and I don't give a shit about how technology is now. I care about what the technology can and should be. And then once you get up to my level, then a lot of this shit is a walk in the park. Okay, let's say that you're using 10 pounds of material to thrust yourself forward. How much material do you need to go a certain distance? Well, let's say you're constantly reusing that 10 pounds of material, then I would say have 20 pounds of material and you're good. The only thing that you're going to have to concern yourself with is, again, the degradation of the fuel itself, the propellant. So, if you have material that you're shooting back that doesn't degrade easily, and you're able to constantly reuse it, right? Like water in a freaking tube or something. It just never degrades, but you're able to propel it, and then reconstitute it, flow it back up slowly, propel it, flow it back up slowly, propel it. You will get a constant velocity, right? Because let's just say it's going boom, constant, and flowing constant. But the flowing part is the slower, it's a less impact to your velocity method of moving it forward. And then you get that big push on the other end. It can be a cycle, and then it's about your power supply. That's nuclear rockets. That's true nuclear rockets. And all it takes is then whatever amount of power you're going to supply for the system is your main infrastructure. You don't need tons of fuel. They're talking about hundreds of tons of fuel. I'm talking about you can do this with like maybe 1 ton of fuel or less, and that will get you to Pluto without refueling ever. No problem. If you're already thinking in the 50 tons of fuel range, wow, you don't know how to reuse anything. That's the entire thing of how NASA works. So I'm like, you drop the bar, you drop the entire, like, I'm sorry, how do you fail this badly at being efficient with your fuel and everything? I don't like it. So here's the thing, right? Yeah, you translate all of that into 1 ton of fuel, you can go anywhere you want with that fuel. The degradation of the fuel, the embrittlement can be negated. Your radioactive materials and everything else can be recharged or something, reconstituted. There's a lot of innovation that can go into proper nuclear rocketry that we haven't even started working on. Because no one thinks about a recycling rocket. Because they think, well, if you shoot it backwards, it has to be able... Also, why are you pushing everything backwards? Why don't you pull yourself forwards? Like climbing a ladder instead of stepping on the ladder in order to move forward. You could also climb the ladder with your damn arms. You have arms. You can electromagnet connect all the material that's in front of you and pull that towards you. And the faster you go, the more stuff that you're interacting with, the faster you can go. That's a vortex engine. Not only that, you're collecting material as you go, which also means you're going to scrape the material off of the area that you just traveled. So the next one who wants to go needs to have a different trajectory, a different path that they follow. It's like, yeah, you used up all of that stuff. And it depends. So if you kept on doing that, like over time, there would eventually be an area of space where it's a lot more empty than parts per trillion or whatever. It would be parts per quadrillion or whatever. And you can't pull yourself forward as easily with that. That's fine. Then what if we cycle it through ourselves and out the back, so the parts per trillion stays at that level, so we can reuse that same area of space. And the question is, how much of that do we even need to save? How much of it do we have to be concerned about if we use it and then flow out the back, like an ion drive? A regular scramjet takes what it has in front of it, shoots it out the back by accelerating it with electromagnetism. Very simple. And if you start doing stuff like that, you have to have a lot of those in order to make the stuff work, but you're using the stuff that's out there. It's like a propeller going through air, but it's meant for space. It's using tiny materials because that's what's available. But a closed loop system, if you can do that, you're infinite. You don't need to worry about it. It's disturbing.
Fast. But with speculative stuff such as direct fusion drives or just a really, really big fission reactor in space that's on the order of hundreds of megawatts, possibly an antimatter engine. And after all, that one doesn't require magnetic confinement and has very high fuel efficiency, much higher than it's on the order of hundreds of megawatts. Possibly an antimatter engine. And after all, that one doesn't require magnetic confinement.
I did not just hear you say that. Holy fuck. Hello. Let me explain to you antimatter for 2 seconds. You need magnets to hold it! You can't hold it! What are you talking about? Ah! Ah! What are you literally, what are you talking about? Hold on. Fuck off. No.
Such as direct fusion drives or just a really, really big fission reactor in space that's on the order of hundreds of megawatts. Possibly an antimatter engine. And after all, that one doesn't require magnetic confinement.
It fucking does, dude. No. Oh my god. You can't hold antimatter at all. You can't hold it. A substance like that, interacting with regular matter, explodes! You need electromagnetism to hold the antimatter fuel. More than a tokamak. Tokamaks are pussies. They have tiny power. They do nothing. Antimatter is extremely... And then you want to accelerate an electromagnetic field induced antimatter. Electromagnetic... I have a headache. No, dude. You can't say that on the internet and not have me bitch slap you with facts. Shut up. No. buddy. It can't touch anything. No, I haven't been that pissed off. I haven't been that pissed off since there are very few things that I've had to listen to in my life that have made me that pissed off. You can't say that.
And has very high fuel efficiency, much higher than fission or fusion for that matter. Hey, it requires just milligrams of fuel. Problem is, we only make nanograms of antimatter per year, and it's very, very expensive. Not to mention,
You better say you're holding it with electromagnetism.
it would result in catastrophic annihilation on containment failure. Kind of like how ships and
How do you contain it, dude? You said it doesn't take electromagnetism. It does to contain it. Huh?
Star Trek have a tendency to explode. And one that's even more sci-fi than that would be really big laser arrays or microwave transmitters. You can stick them.
Okay, again, until you start learning how to use electromagnetism and the electromagnetic field and accelerating that along with your light, you're not going to have light that's going fast enough to keep up with your ship. At some point, your ship is going to go faster than the light can keep up with it to do as much work as you want it to do. It's like having your kid push your car forward up a hill. I did that. I actually did that when I was in kindergarten. I'm talking 1991 when I was 4 years old. I pushed my parents' car up a snowy hill, and I put more effort into it than my parents did somehow, because I knew how to dig in and really give it a push, harder than my parents gave, which is like, kids are crazy strong. But expecting light or electromagnetism like that, in order for that to really work, you have to keep on shining it towards the thing. It's going to reflect back, and it's going to have a lot more damage on the way back to everything that it hits. Forget about neutron embrittlement. You're working with light now. You're going to burn yourself faster than you embrittlate. But also, like, you could make it so that you can reflect the light as it comes back, so that it just goes back out again and not have that problem. And then as you generate it and generate it and generate it, it actually iterates on itself, sort of a multiplicative effect, and you have like one laser doing the power of trillions of lasers, hopefully.
On Earth, or you can stick them on the moon for that matter. The moon might be better. You don't have to worry about the atmosphere. To push a lightweight sail that could potentially accelerate constantly. And then you just have
What? Is there atmosphere in outer space? I forgot. Hold on. You freaking lost me for fucking.
very high fuel efficiency, much higher than fission or fusion for that matter. Hey, it requires just milligrams of fuel. Problem is, we only make nanograms of antimatter per year, and it's very, very expensive. Not to mention, it would result in catastrophic annihilation on containment failure.
No shit.
Kind of like how ships in Star Trek have a tendency to explode. And one that's even more sci-fi than that would be really big laser arrays or microwave transmitters. You can stick them on Earth, or you can stick them on the moon for that matter. The moon might be better. You don't have to worry about the atmosphere.
Oh, that's what he was talking about. The lasers are based on the moon. You know, you can have the lasers based on the ship. You can do that. You don't have to have it based on the moon. You can have it based on... Okay, the reason why you would have it based on the moon and why that'd be great is that you can externalize the power source. Again, you're shooting a target, it's really far away, and hoping that that consistent laser beam is going to help it move forward instead of, like, you know, whatever.
To push a lightweight sail that could potentially accelerate constantly. And then you just have another one on Mars to slow you down. Obviously,
It doesn't matter if it's lightweight, it matters if it has a surface that interacts with the electromagnetic spectrum, reflections, or you could also have other types of materials that work with other spectrums.
you get there first, but that's plausible with some sci-fi scale infrastructure. And if you get there, I'm pretty sure traveling to Earth to Mars
I'm
in
glad I
45
didn't stop
days probably
responding
isn't a
because
huge
holy
concern
shit.
anymore for you anyway. But let's say this did work. Let's say this technology, this hybrid NTP, NEP thing did get you there in 45 days. You're still going to need to shield the crew from solar and cosmic radiation, so you're going to need to have that additional shielding that you would need normally, plus this hybrid engine's added bulk. You're going to need to take care of your cryogenic hydrogen propellant at high speeds. It's going to need to be able to withstand the inertial and structural stresses from that acceleration to get you up to bursts of 30 to 40.
Let's not use bursts, let's just use consistent. Bursts, really, are you worried about the stress of the rocket pushing on everything? Because you really can just be strong enough to handle whatever amount of thrust you're using. Huh?
Kilometers per second. And there's just the orbital mechanics aspect that's going to need to be able to be coordinated between Earth and Mars for a high-speed intercept. Again, not things that are impossible, but things that are also going to make it challenging, even if the propulsion thing was sorted.
Again, if you use a closed-loop, constant regenerative, or constantly recycling rocket system, you can slow yourself down as well before you get there by turning yourself around, rocketing in the back direction, and then, like, you'll have to wait, like, a certain amount of time for you to fully slow down or something. But you could slow down way sooner before you get there. At that point, why not just take the full length of travel? I don't know.
Off sooner than you might think. With a stated goal of landing cargo on Mars in 2033 ahead of human visitation in 2039, NASA only has a limited window of time to get its new hardware designed.
Did someone just say an electromagnetic catcher's mitt? Please don't. Inertial dampeners, please, also. But, I mean, you're going, 50,000 kilometers an hour. You need more than a catcher's mitt. Technically, you could make a very long catcher's mitt, or runway. It would have to be like a kilometer wide, and as you go through it, your velocity makes... it's like pushing copper through a tube that the electro and magnetic fields interact with each other to make velocities kind of make more energy, and then that energy is then used. Really, you can't go any faster and harder through it. It'll just keep on making more field, and then you slow down. But do you want to experience that amount of deceleration that fast? You might want to slow down before you get there anyway.
Lines locked in. To make the choice,
Not impossible, but you can't have a single, like, budget failure or any sort of unanticipated snag. I still think that's pretty ambitious, considering we're in We're barely beyond
Structure
proof
failure,
of concept phase.
between NTP, NEP, or a bimodal system. According to Scientific American, the decision realistically needs to come by 2027 to make building a workable rocket in time a reality.
That sounds about right. So what do they say, by 2033 with cargo? Yeah, 6 years heads up. It's probably going to need at least that long.
We might now just be 4 years away from the beginning of a mega project on par with the first transcontinental railroad.
You're really going to wait that long to just make a system that's going to utilize hundreds of tons of materials and just eject that out into space to get you there a little sooner when, again, have they tried making a closed loop system? Because the velocity still counts. Like, if I was inside the shuttle and I give it a good shove, there's a bit of force translated to the entire ship. And therefore, if everyone pushes hard enough, you can make the ship start spinning or stop spinning. You can make it go forward or backward. It depends on where the force is applied and the coordination of everything. But that's a small amount of force, but what I'm talking about is you could increase it, have it be closed loop, have it be constant, have it be like extreme accelerated, and then extremely muffled as it gets slowed down, and then slowly brought up, and then repeat.
Hopefully we're just 4 years out. Of course, we're 2
just remake the entire thing and you'll be there in no time.
years out now because you said 2023, but maybe it's an additional 4. Hopefully it doesn't turn into the nuclear fusion always being 20 years out thing.
The things we love about
We're not even
these
starting
space
making
videos
the
is
right
how
technology.
often they leave us with a sense of wonder, with a sense of standing on the edge of something that will expand our horizons. And in this case, it's something that could finally make humankind an interplanetary species. Our species may have been dreaming
Or at least
about this
get us
since
there. I
1950.
mean, there's other...
Here's the thing. You accomplished this. Great job. You wasted a lot. In my day, we would just have a closed loop system. We would just be gone. We wouldn't even need to worry about when we launch, because who cares about the length of time if you're going at that speed? You could just launch literally on the other side of the orbit, and you'll get there in time anyway. Forgetting about the entire, best case scenario. At certain speeds, you're not going to care about best case scenario. You could just go.
challenges with actually building a colony and then getting it self-sustaining. Because I would assume being interplanetary, he means having a self-sustaining city on Mars that could...
Again, if you really want to go to Mars, you want to put all that stuff there, you just need to send more rockets in the window. You'll get there using less. Going faster is really irrelevant to the total scope of the thing. Although it helps you be able to get there and make sure that you get there possibly with less radiation, whatever, blah. But come on, man, you can get there anyway already. I don't like this.
potentially take care of itself if something horrible happened to Earth.
But it really seems like now, finally, those bygone dreams may be about to come true.
Man, I really hope so, but I just can't help but be skeptical. Thanks so much for the recommendation, and thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.
Dying Light the Beast. Pre-order now.
I can't not say that he's great. He is pretty good. He's pretty good. He's pretty good. What is this nonsense? I am not reacting to another fucking thing. No, I got stuff to do. If everyone points lasers at the moon, I mean, that's amusing. But that's another whole thing. I suggest watching that just for amusement's sake. Just watch it for the sake of it's haha. And bye. Seriously, get your